The Madman!
Welcome to the star ratings for Shaman, Warlock, and Warrior for Ashes of Outland. Poor Shaman. It had its Galakrond nerfed, and then nerfed again. And I think it might have gotten nerfed again, but who's keeping track, right? But at least it has Overload. Unfortunately, Overload is rotating away for it. So basically, Shaman goes into this expansion with almost nothing. The first package I'll introduce for Shamans is the Evolve package. We have Bogstruck Clacker and Bog Spine Knuckles. The problem with these Evolve mechanics is that OG Evolve was 1 mana, and the reason why Evolve was good is because it was 1 mana. You could play your Desert Hare, you could Evolve. We had a bunch of good times with that as Shamans rolled us over with that combination. Hey, what if you play Bog Spine Knuckles and then you play Desert Hare? It just comes online too late. I just don't really see an Evolve combination. So for both of these Evolve cards, I have to give it 1 star apiece. Another package Shaman's getting is Spell Synergy. Marsh Spawn is insane. It's a 3 mana 3/4, which gives you an effect as good as drawing a card. Serpent Shine Portal is Flanking Strike, except better because you only pay 3 mana up front. Totemic Reflection is actually insane on Evil Totem or Manatide Totem. And even if you play it on a basic totem, that's 5 mana for 2/4s. Vivid Spores, Mass Ancestral Spirit. You only want an Ancestral Spirit one thing usually, but hey, Mass doing it, that's massive value. Shattered Rumbler, that's just really efficient if you cast a spell last turn. Torrent is really efficient if you cast a spell last turn. That's 2 mana for basically hard removal. Lady Vosh is incredible. You want to put these primes in control decks. Lady Vosh goes into a spell deck, which is a control deck by default, because spells tend to be answers. So Lady Vosh is actually great. So this is the main package that Shaman is getting. Spells tend to be for control deck. So the big question to ask is, will Control Shaman be good? I don't think so. If you're looking for a control deck, I think right now most of the control decks out there want to be Highlander, because Zephyrus and Dragon Queen Alexstrasza are insane. Also, I think Control Shaman, or Highlander Shaman, as it were, gets outclassed by the heavier control decks of Priest and Warrior. And Highlander Mage also, that's basically a control deck. So why would you play Shaman instead of those 3 classes? And that is the sadness here. And even though Shaman is getting a lot of good cards here, I do think a number of these cards are really good. There's just not enough support for it. While we're putting good cards on the board here, let's put up Lurker Below, which a lot of people are laughing at, but I actually think it's a very strong card. This entire pool of cards, I'm going to say, they're good cards. I would love to play 1 copy of each in a Highlander Shaman deck. So therefore, even though I think all of these cards are good and they're pushing Shaman's power level up, Shaman's power level is pretty low right now, so these cards alone won't save them. I rate all these cards as good, but I'm still only going to give them each 2 stars, because they'll probably all see experimentation in a Highlander Shaman deck, which will end up being not very good. In summary, sad Shaman days is what I predict for this expansion. I think Warlock has 2 main packages going for it. One is the Zoo type package. Nightshade Matron and Hand of Gul'dan have internal synergy with each other. You play the Nightshade Matron, you discard your highest cost card in a Zoo deck that can easily be Hand of Gul'dan. So you play Nightshade Matron and you effectively draw net 2 cards. That's pretty sweet. And yet, I'm going to rate both of those cards 1 star. A meme. I think Hand of Gul'dan is a huge trap. I actually had the chance to try it out, and it is really inconsistent to draw both. When you only have Nightshade Matron in your hand, you're like, oh, I don't want to play this. It's a 4-mana 5/5 rush that discards my highest cost card. Like, that actually is kind of bad. And Hand of Gul'dan, you never actually want to play it. 6 mana, draw 3 cards in Warlock? That's terrible. It's trash, I think. Kenra Thought Evanlock is solid 2 mana 3/2, but it also has that Mech Warper ability of your demons cost 1 less instead of mechs. And it shuffles into like an awesome prime at the end. So Kenra Thought I'm giving 3 stars on. I'm thinking that Zoo generally will get outfaced by face decks and maybe even out-tempoed by tempo decks, won't be able to stick minions. So it's in that world that I'm rating Darkglare 2 stars. Because yeah, 3 mana 3/4 with a good ability is nice, but what if you don't get to use the good ability? If you just played this on turn 3, I think the Darkglare is going to get removed. I think the self-damage Warlock archetype isn't that strong, especially if there's multiple face decks out there. A 3-mana 3/4, which makes your taps free, that's not necessarily that good. And then we wrap around to the card that's going to absolutely boost Warlock. Imprisoned Scrap Imp. Zoo wishes it could play Glowstone Technician, and now it can. It can play Glowstone Technician for 2 mana. That's absolutely insane. You can easily just play Imprisoned Scrap Imp turn 2, maybe you tap turn 3 because you played Imprisoned Scrap Imp on 2, and then like maybe you play a 1-drop, and then turn 4, you buff your whole hand, and then you go to town. Like maybe you drop multiple 1-drops. But where I really am excited by Imprisoned Scrap Imp is in the other package that Warlock got. This would be the Handlock/Control package, which is all the other cards. There are 2 really good ones here, and 3 really bad ones. So let's cover the bad ones first. Unstable Fellbolt, that is no Holy Smite. Weak, 1 star. The Dark Portal I think is also 1 star. Paying 4 mana to only get a potential 5 mana discount is kind of bad. You only get a 1 mana discount. Sure, it means you can ramp up and play the big demon on 5, play the big card on 5, but I don't think it's worth it, 1 star. And speaking of what you could send through the Dark Portal, it could be Enhanced Dreadlord, 1 star by the way. Its total stat line is 8 mana 10/12, but I don't think that quite cuts it. So let's cover the actual cards I'm really excited about in this Control Warlock deck. Shadow Council. I don't think it's a meme. I think you put this into your usual handlock deck, Galakron handlock deck. You have the chance of playing some really techie cards, especially against Demon Hunters, such as Sacrificial Pact. If they're no good, you play Shadow Council. Like, Shadow Council is a good utility card to play to turn all of your other utility cards that aren't working in this particular matchup into useful demons at +2/+2. Or just 1 mana buff your whole hand by +2/+2. Sure, it's random demons, less good than your average cards, but +2/+2 random demons, that's really good. Lay out an Imprisoned Scrap Imp, wait a turn, tap Shadow Council, wait a turn, and then your whole hand is +4/+4. That's insane. It looks like a meme, but I think Shadow Council is a real dream. And finally, you've got Peladon the Breaker, which, you know, even if it were just 6 mana 3/3 destroy a minion, I think Warlock would be running that for too long. They've only had Siphon Soul for removal, which only gained 3 health. Now you get a 3/3 instead of 3 health. That's great. But when you draw it, it's Twisting Nether plus the 3/3, and that's insane. I think you just put it into your general control deck and you try to cut out the meme parts of Plot Twist. 5 stars, Peladon. In summary, Warlock never changes. I think there's some good additions to a zoo deck. I think there's some great additions to a hand deck, and with Mountain Giant out of the equation, I think that's particularly a reason why Blizzard decided they could introduce some really strong hand buffing concepts like Imprisoned Scrap Imp and Shadow Council, and the Dark Portal, which might have been over the top if Mountain Giant were still around. Going into this expansion, Warrior has a strong deck. It's Galakron Warrior. However, Galakron Warrior is losing Town Crier, big loss. Acolyte of Pain, really big loss. So I don't think Galakron Warrior will necessarily be tier 1, but maybe tier 2. Where there's a possibility also, though, is Highlander Warrior, because that was decent as a control deck. We're getting some really strong cards for Warrior in this expansion as well. The cards basically are divided into 2 main categories for Warrior. There's an aggressive package, and there's a control package. So let's cover the aggressive package first. Starting with Imprisoned Gnarg, I actually believe this is now the best 1-drop to play ever in the history of Hearthstone. Play it on turn 1, it's amazing. 5 stars, the only thing that might have competed with it is pre-nerf Undertaker. Corsair Cache is a card that tutors a weapon for you, and the main weapon I see it tutoring for is Ankar, which you can play on curve by the way, but Pirate Warrior hates going turn 2 Corsair Cache, turn 3 Ankar. That's really slow. 1 star Corsair Cache, can't really see any other use for it either. Bone Chewer Raider is a 3 mana 4/4 with Rush. If there's a damaged minion, can be either side. I think that's just difficult enough, just barely difficult enough that I don't think the payoff for a 3 mana 4/4 Rush is enough. 1 star. And finally we have Blood Boil Brute, which I think is actually a card that will fit into Galakron Warrior. Blood Boil Brute is kind of the compensation for losing Acolyte of Pain. Really rewards you for having damaged minions on both sides. And I actually think this is a very strong card. So I'm giving that 5 stars. And then the other package is everything you can put into a control warrior list. Sword and Board is a basic 1 mana for almost a bash. The bash can't go face. I think Sword and Board doesn't quite cut it. 1 star. Blade Storm, I think, is a fantastic card that you'll certainly see in Highlander Warrior. The only question is Highlander Warrior good enough to compete with Highlander Priest? And I think it's this inferior one of those. So I'm going to give that a 3 star. I also don't think that Control Warrior works at the moment because there's not enough value. Bulwark of Azeroth, I think, is a meme. 1 star. It's really specific in its usage against big things attacking you. Warmwall Challenger, 3 stars. I think this card fits into Highlander Warrior. I don't think it's that good past it. It is really flexible. I could see a world where you actually do run this in an aggro tempo deck, but other than that, Kargath Bladefist. Now that's a great card for a deck that wants to go a bit long. Of course, unfortunately, Towncrier is no longer here to fetch Kargath, but still 3 stars. I think this will fit into the Highlander / control type of warrior. Just kill stuff, fast card, gain 10 armor, everything you could want in the late game. And finally, you have Scrap Golem, which I think is just too weak. 5 mana for 4/5 with taunt. Nah, 1 star, pass. Sure, you can buff it up, but I think you would rather just not bother. In summary, I think both packages will be relevant. You can put the more tempo-oriented cards into a Galakron Warrior, and Galakron Warrior will probably try to be more sharp and more vicious, especially with the loss of Acolyte of Pain. It'll turn into more of a tempo kill you deck. And then you've got Highlander Warrior as an option, which is a Control Warrior type. Someday, Control Warrior will come about again, but losing Dr. Boom Mad Genius is huge, doesn't have the endgame value support.